Today I'm going to show you how to make a template for thumbnail sketches so that they will be in proportion and so that you can transfer them easily to your full-size canvas. Most of the time I use an 11 by 14 canvas, so I'm going to show you how to do this for 11 by 14. Now I've got a complex one that I put together like this. I'm just going to show you how to do one of these. I've got like a square here for a small size, and then a larger size thumbnail, and then a larger size, and so on. And these are based on my proportional dividers. So I have these proportional dividers, look like this. I think I got this on Amazon. I'm going to roll this over so you can see it. And what I've done is I figured out what is the proportion on these things so that I can make my thumbnail sketches, so I can use this to transfer the drawings over. The way you find out what your ratio is on these, there's two ways to do it. One way is to measure from the fulcrum point here out to the tip. This looks to be about 2 inches here. And then measure from the fulcrum to the tip on the other end. And this looks to be about 8 inches. So 8 inches divided by 2 inches gives you 4. So that means that this ratio here is a 4. So I want to make my template or my thumbnail sketch so it is 1/4 the size of my canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some index cards. And I got the largest size I got, which is this 5 times 8 or 5 by 8. And we can pull one of these out of here. Maybe. There we go. I'm not going to use the rule side, but what we're going to do is we're going to use this side over here. Now we want to have this in proportion to our ruler, our divider. So we're going to use a ratio of 4. So I want to do 14 by 11. Now we always want to do the X distance first and then the Y distance. So that's why sometimes you see 11 by 14 and sometimes 14 by 11. So for us, we're going to use 14 by 11, and since we're going to do a ratio of 4, we'll divide each one of these numbers by 4, and then that'll give me 3.5 inches by 2.75 inches. Now the first thing we do is we're going to come in a little bit of a distance from the edge, and I'm going to come in 2/10. It really doesn't matter. You'd like to have a small distance, but something workable here. We could have come in 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch, but the main thing is to be parallel with the edge of our card here. And we're going to come up 2 inches from 2/10 of an inch from the bottom. Now these don't have to be the same, other than if I come up 3/10 from here, I'd have to come up 3/10 on both sides, but I'm just going to make both edges up 2/10 of an inch. And then we'll strike this line across here. Now, we've got our distance here we want to have, 3.5 and 2.75. So we're going to come across the bottom here, the 3.5. And come across here, 3.5. Now, the trick is you don't want to be like this, but you'd like to be kind of parallel with this line up here. And we want to measure from this edge that we've drawn over here. And then we're going to go across here. We don't need to go all the way across from top to bottom here. but we're going to anyway. We do need to be across down here. We need to have this X here, but we could, not necessarily have that up there. Okay, now we're going to come up the 2.75 inches. So 2.75 is about there. I could come up 2.75 from here, but I'm going to go all the way to this edge, and the reason why is because this will give us a little bit more of an accurate line. There's 7.5. Okay. And like I say, we only really needed to go to here, but I'm going to draw this line all the way across. We do need to be all the way across here. Now that we have this, we know where our corners are, and we're going to cut them with a cutter. Now I got this one from Harbor Freight, and I think it was like, I don't know, 49 cents or something like that. Sometimes you get them for free. Now we're going to cut some holes in here. Now be sure you've got something that you can cut onto. You don't want to be cutting onto the dining room table. But basically we want to be pretty close to this edge, but still where we can see through it. And the ones I had in my original one were quite a bit bigger. I find out that being smaller is a little bit better because I can find that a little bit easier in the hole. So we just cut each one of these. Now, making a template like this is just a heck of a lot easier than trying to measure off a relatively accurate thumbnail sketch in proportion. And you don't really have to have it in proportions to your proportional dividers, but just in proportion to the canvas size. Because if you try drawing a thumbnail sketch on something that's not proportional to your canvas, then when you try to draw it in the canvas, it's going to look completely different and won't work out quite as well. Okay, now that we've got these holes in here, what I can do is on any piece of paper I want, I can very quickly mark off like this. Well, and then I can use a straight edge, or I can just kind of, do this with it, and real quickly I've got something proportions. Obviously it would have been better if I used a straight edge. So let's just go back over this with a straight edge. Usually I use a straight edge because it's just not that hard to do with a straight edge. But now what we've got is a system in here, or what we have now is a layout for a thumbnail sketch, and we can do a notan in it, or a color study, or just placement. We can also do our grid lines. If you like to use Dynamic Symmetry, which I like to use, you can do your Dynamic Symmetry lines across there. And of course we can, and down and just do the rest of them. Or if you want to do, rule of thirds, you can do rule of thirds on there. If you don't happen to have a ruler marked off in tenths, and you have a ruler like this that's marked off in eighths, what we can do is we can always convert our tenths into eighths, which is relatively easy to do. For example, if we had, let's say we had something like maybe 2.2 inches. So we had something like 2.2 inches. If I wanted to convert 2.2 inches into 2 inches and so many eighths, sixteenths, or whatever, the first thing I do is I will have a whole part, which is the 2 inches, plus I have 2/10 of an inch. Well, 2/10 of an inch, if I take that number and multiply it times 8, I'll get 1.6. And what that means is that that's 1.6 eighths, or if we round it off, it's 2/8. And you can reduce that down to 1/4 of an inch, but if you're marking off an eighth, just count over 2/8. If I wanted to know what this was in 1/16 of an inch, I do 0.2 times 16. And 0.2 times 16 is going to give us 3.2. So if I round that off to 3, I'll get 3/16. If I wanted to know it in 30/2 of an inch, I'll take 0.2 times 32. 0.2 times 32 gives us 6.4, which is 6/32. Now, as I go down into smaller and smaller increments here, I get more and more accuracy on there. Well, let's say that 2/10 was about 3/16. Now I've got my 1/10 of an inch ruler, and I've got 1/8 of an inch here also. Let's see. Here's my 2/10. So if I come over, what was this measurement here? 3/16. So 2 and 3/16. Let's see, there's the half. That must be 1/4. That's an 8. So 16ths is there. 1, 2. There's 3/16 right there by that A in art. I'm going to set that right there. And if I go over here, now to my tenths of ruler, you'll notice how close it is to 2 and 2/10. Just a little bit off. If I did 16ths, I'd be a little more accurate, so have to move it a little bit until we end up with that. So it's very easy to convert over from your tenths of an inch to 16, 32nds, eighths, whatever you want, and you can do it that way. Now another thing that's really nice once you are able to do this, something we can do is we can mark off one of our graphs on here, and this one's a little bit different. This one I marked off. Let's see, I've got my original one here. Let's see, line that up and it comes out to here. So on this one, what I've got is this particular grid I've got marked off on here. Notice that it comes out like this, and it is the divide by 4 here. So, and you can see where I've marked off for my dynamic symmetry grids. So I got dynamic symmetry grids on here. What I can do with that then is I can take a piece of transparency and lay over the top of this and mark off my corners. This way I can kind of have one that's built up all the time. And then I can say if I want my horizon line to be along here, I can do that. If I want to put some items along here, like something here that lines up with this Baroque angle here, or I can start a house that's over in here with the edge of it this way, something in here. So I can do this, but then I can take this off of that grid and kind of take a look at it, what it looks like without the grid marks on there. Another thing I can do is if I put it back on here, I can take a second piece of transparency and lay over the top of that. Now this one I happen to have something I was working on with this. Let me just put that on there like this, and you can see how I've got it lined up with the grids on here. Now another thing that's really good is I can use 2 transparencies, and I can put, like, let's say I want a figure, little stick guy here, and maybe I say, well, he looks good there. What if I moved him over here or down here or like this, so I can kind of move some things around and try it different ways. And then once I've got this laid out, since it's in proportion with my proportional dividers, I can take this and say, okay, I got a line here on my full-size canvas, and I say, well, the height of this is going to be about like this, or let's just say, yeah, the height here. Then I can go over to my full-size canvas on that line and mark up to there, and then I can transfer this over a little bit easier than trying to do grids on here and the grid method. So it makes things run a lot faster. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and hope it helps you make more use of thumbnail sketches. And good luck to you, and thank you for watching to the end of this video.